All right, guys, let's get this party started. This is Katie over at Holganix, and I have Rob McCoy with me. Rob, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us, Rob. Appreciate your time.
No problem.
So Rob is our National Sales Manager here at Holganix. Rob, can you tell them a little bit about your background?
I guess about 20 plus years ago, I got into the lawn care industry and started off as a lawn care technician and cut my teeth that way, went into sales and owned my own business and have bounced around a little bit, but settled in with Holganix in these past years, and I love the messaging behind it and the results that we see. So it's exciting when you have a lot of experience in the industry and you find something that you can believe in and get behind.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I got here.
Cool. And one of the reasons why we chose Rob to be on this webinar today is not just because he's the sales manager, but he's also worked with a lot of the golf courses that we're going to be discussing today. So you've actually hung out with the superintendents, you have heard what they have to say, and you've been part of the reporting process back to us in marketing about the results they're seeing. So
yeah. I get to hear the pain and the success.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really great webinar today. But before we get started, we want to just understand what your level of comfort is in our product line. So I'm going to just launch this poll. Give me 1 second. All right. So are you currently using any Holganix products? Please select all that apply. If you are from one of our distributors, welcome. Please select the products that you feel the most comfortable selling or talking about. Okay. Looks like we got 57% of the vote. 71. We reached 80%. All right. Let's share the results. And, oh, what's going on? Sorry, guys. We have a new, they just updated this, so give me a second. That's true. We may have to do that. All right, we'll read them off. Sorry about that, guys. So 17% of you said Holganix Bio 800 Golf. 33% said Holganix PB1 Golf. 17%, said Healthy Girl infused with Holganix. That's our granular product line. And 50% said I'm not using Holganix products yet.
Okay, great.
All right. So here's our agenda today. We're going to do a little bit about the product, understand what's in it, what the results are that we're talking about, and then we're going to go into the case studies and data that we have selected for today. We've got over 70 case studies collected in the turf industry. We've just chosen a handful, but I will provide links to all of our case studies after the webinar. And then we'll discuss a little golf promo we have going on, and we'll open it up for Q&A.
Sounds good.
So, Rob, what is Holganix Bio 800 Golf?
So the simple answer to what Bio 800 Golf is that it is living biology that we incorporate into the soil to increase results. The results that we're paying attention to are the playability, plant uptake, root depth and density, and really just improving a lot of the resiliency when it comes to dealing with weather and disease and traffic, different things like that we see on a golf course that sometimes can get underestimated. I mean, weather's always a factor, but when you just look at something like traffic and you take a par 3 tee box, for example, it just will get destroyed quickly with divots and things like that. The recovery time there is a big factor, sometimes dependent upon the size of the tee box, how often you can actually move the tee box.
Mm-hmm. So just to kind of review, we got nutrient utilization. Some guys will actually cut back on their nutrients, though for the most part, superintendents choose not to. Recovery and playability, which Rob was really going into. Root depth and density, which really speaks back to that recovery and playability. Increased tolerance to stress from weather, traffic, and disease. And that last bullet that was cut off, my bad, is soil health.
Yeah, and sometimes soil health gets overlooked because of a lack of understanding about it and what really is the definition of soil health. And that can vary depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. But when we look at a golf course specifically, it's different than a lot of other parts of the green industry where you're moving from one location to the next. You have an investment into the land that is that golf course and how you can get that to produce a result for you. So being able to produce a visible result, but also at the same time invest in the land and the soil that's there is important to constantly make that improve over year after year.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like switching from my Mac to your Dell actually did cut off some of our PowerPoint slides here. So I'm sorry, guys.
Not too much.
So Rob, this is just a little messy infographic here, but can you talk to us about what is actually in the product?
So I think that, sometimes we get lost in the science behind this because when it really comes down to it, we're focusing on the results that we're able to produce. Mm-hmm. But on a large scale, you have an almost, it seems like an infinite amount of biology that's in the soil. Right. And so much of it hasn't even been identified yet. But there's a whole ecosystem within the soil, and the more efficiently we can make that ecosystem work, the more beneficial it is for the plants. If you look at the healthy, thriving soil, there's a lot of life in it. And plants will thrive there. A good example of that is if you go into a forest, nobody's fertilizing any of the trees there or any of the foliage that's there, and it's still thriving because it's native to that environment. It was suited for the biology that's in the soil and how that soil produces nutrients like nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus for a plant to thrive in different amounts. So, there's different things like phosphorus solubilizing bacteria, nitrogen fixing bacteria that will play a factor in the Bio 800 product. But what's really important to understand is that the soil biology is so diverse that if we don't try and encompass as much of that as we possibly can, we could be potentially missing the mark when it comes to what's going to be helpful in the soil. It's very difficult to, I mentioned before that a lot of the soil biology isn't even identified. So how are you going to identify exactly what's missing every single time and just put that one factor back in there? Right. So the diversity and the ability for us to stack biology within a concentrated product is important because we're going to cover as many bases as possible and rebuild a soil ecosystem so that a plant will feel as though it's in its native environment, and then it'll be able to thrive.
Mm-hmm. So Holganix Bio 800 Plus, and if you think back about what Rob was just saying, if you look at our name, the Bio 800 Plus product name, it stands for over 800 species of beneficial soil microbes. That's a heck of a lot of diversity in that jug.
Yeah, and that's the safest low number that we could use. Right. I know that the counts are always higher than that. We use the 800 number to be safe. But specifically in the golf product, we usually see that number up in the 1,100-1,200 range. Mm-hmm. The more diversity that we can have and pack in there, the better it is.
So as you look at the actual product, I mean, we talked about what's in it, but I think it's important to note some semantics as well.
Some of the basics.
Yeah, some of the basics.
It is a liquid product.
It is. Now, we do have a granular product that does have the Bio 800, a lot of the Bio 800 in the granular product.
Yeah, it's infused.
Yes. So, but this one that we're talking about today is the liquid product. It's also 100% organic, and we do recommend that it be used in a fertilizer program. So it's not a standalone product.
No, there is no NPK analysis.
No.
There's, that you still need nutrients. Now, it's going to find nutrients within the soil and within the atmosphere and make them more readily available to a plant. But when you talk about the performance that you need out of turf for golf, you still are going to need to have fertilizer program built in.
Okay. So at this point, let me just make sure I didn't skip something. Okay, we're good. At this point, we are jumping into a lot of our case studies.
Okay.
We talked about the high-level product within the product. Now let's talk about some of these case studies. Now, Broken Sound Golf Club, they're located in Boca Raton, Florida. The superintendent, or rather, I think his official title is Director of Golf Maintenance and Environmental Sustainability. I don't know, big handful of titles there. His name is Shannon Easter. Can you talk a little bit about specifically, these are the reductions that he saw?
So, one of the things that's really interesting about Shannon and a lot of the other case studies that we received is that we were not part of it.
Right.
And I would say, Katie, you may know better than me, but I think that like 90% of the results and case studies that we share, we had nothing to do with it. It was feedback that was unsolicited that we received.
That's right.
Because people were impressed with the result or surprised at the result that they were getting. Shannon is one of those examples where he was really analyzing a lot of the data that he was getting, doing a ton of testing, and realized there was something to it the more that he used it. And there's a ton of disease pressure in that part of Florida and southern Florida. So having a 30% reduction in fungicides saved him a ton of money. It also it actually decreases the amount of stress on the turf. Because if you think about it, every time you're putting a chemical onto the turf, there's going to be some level of stress that you're trying to combat. The same thing with the nitrogen reduction, the fact that you can reduce the amount of nitrogen. Not only are you reducing some potential stress, you're also reducing some of the surge growth that you may have from when the nitrogen gets released. So if you can lower those numbers, you're reducing the stress. And then, they use a tremendous amount of water in an environment that is that hot. So if you look at some of the other, parts of the country that are similar to that, Arizona, Nevada, Southern California, the rest of Florida, parts of Texas, they're all irrigating a lot. So that cost by itself can really create some space in savings in their budget to be able to increase these results.
And I should note, Shannon has been using the product since 2015, so he's been using it for quite a while. But the data that we're presenting to you from him specifically is actually rather recent. He did a webinar with us this fall, late fall, maybe even winter. So this, and we'll send you out the link to that video as well, so you can really dig into a lot of the details around this. Yeah,
and this next piece of data that's focused around the root mass and density, sometimes it gets underestimated, but not usually with golf course superintendents, the importance of the root depth and density. But if you think about it is definitely a sign of a healthy plant. But when we get some of these reductions, it's because of the root mass that we have there, and the amount of intake that the plant can have and accommodate.
Mm-hmm. He's also doing a lot of studies as far as what's going on in the soil. And hopefully I've included these charts. It's going to be like
Let's see if you did include the charts.
I didn't.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about it.
Okay.
So he had, he did look at the CECs and just to see what impact was there. It's almost like with Shannon, he was kind of going down a rabbit hole. He would find a piece of information and then dig into the data a bit more and realize that there was even more valuable aspects to the product. So having increased cation exchange capacity was important to him. We've kind of hit on that already with the being able to reduce some of the other inputs is a sign of it, but he was able to test it and confirm that. The decrease in the organic matter, they are all signs of a healthier soil, and that's going to lead to a healthier plant.
Yeah, so I'm going to cheat. I pulled up his blog. So just to share specifically a couple of these numbers. So cation exchange. He showed a 13% average increase in cation exchange on fairways and a 27% average increase on greens. And he actually broke it down between his two courses that he does. And then you have soil organic matter. And so in that result, overall, he saw a 29.55% average decrease in our SOM on the new courses, greens and tees. That's specific to the newer course of the two that he oversees. So it's just some stats for you.
One thing that's probably important to mention about that particular course is he's applying it through fertigation.
Right.
So he's doing it everywhere. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of golf courses that will focus on the greens and tees. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Shannon's numbers, he has different data for fairways, different data for rough, different data for his greens and tees.
Mm-hmm. So in this case, this isn't a golf course, but I know we have some sports turf folks that have registered, so I thought I'd throw it in. Furman University, South Carolina.
Yeah, I actually love this one because we work with a lot of universities, and this is one where, well, typically when we work with a university, we have one aspect of the university, somebody that is kind of bought into the product and wants to use it, and that could be on their general area, it could be on specific sports fields. When you get into higher profile universities, there's more and more people taking care of different aspects of the university. Furman University uses it everywhere. I mean, I don't think that they have any spot that they're not using it. And that was because they kind of had a close-knit community of people that were responsible for this. So as it worked for one aspect, and it bled into another and another and another. But overall, they saw a 40% reduction in fertilizer, and they completely eliminated their fungicide applications.
Their blanketed ones.
So in South Carolina, there's a significant amount of disease pressure because of the humidity and temperatures that they face at different times of the year. So eliminating the fungicide applications is like unheard of.
Yeah, and he still does some little ones here and there when he has problems.
They were doing it proactively before,
right.
where it was just built into their program.
Yeah.
And now it's just on a spot treatment basis that if they see something start to flare up, then they'll treat it. But for the most part, they're not using it at all. The San Diego Padres, again, sports turf, but high profile sports turf, able to one of the things that's remarkable about a golf course or a high profile sports turf is that you don't have any point in time where the turf can't look good.
Right.
So risking the possibility of having the turf even look like it's not performing and doing a reduction in fertilizer it's really risky. It's really dangerous. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they were able to do a 25 to 30% reduction in fertilizer and actually produce a better stand of turf with higher playability because of that root depth and density, that they just made it a win-win across the board, that they could use less inputs and produce a better product.
Mm-hmm. Now this one is Monada Golf Club in Pennsylvania, so it's pretty local to us here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, again, it kind of goes back to the results that we typically get feedback on. The disease pressure is relieved. They're able to use less fungicides, and they've improved rooting. I mean, everybody focuses on the roots, and you can use soil probe and see exactly what you're dealing with to measure that result. This is another example, this time in the Northeast U.S., of another golf course that was seeing those same results.
Going back down where it's warmer?
Now we're back down to the Southeast. And again, it's a lot of similar results. The and flat out the soil is better, as it says. You know, the carbon and nitrogen ratio, the CEC, root length and density. I mean, we sound like a broken record, but I think it's important to recognize that in different parts of the country, and actually with different application methods, because this is not fertigation. This was, just on greens and teas. It's important to see that they're still getting those results regardless of the difference in application method and difference in location.
Yeah. And so in this course's case, he went from 4.81 on CEC to 7.78.
Which is a big difference.
A 60% increase. And then let me skip down to my notes on CDN, if I can find it. All right, I'll have to email it out to you guys afterwards, but it was improved.
So all those data points will get emailed out so that they can actually.
Yeah. I'm going to send all of the case studies so they can actually. I'm sure they want to go more in depth on the details.
Yeah.
All right.
So Red Diamond in Alabama, this was interesting. Just if you focus on the irrigation numbers, I mean, a 75% reduction in the amount of watering that they had to do. Again, with another situation where they have high humidity, high temperatures, a turf that is constantly under stress. To be able to reduce that much irrigation is pretty incredible. And not to mention, they've won awards for
the PGMS Green Star.
Yes.
That was.
So it's not like they're dealing with mediocre results and doing these reductions. They're performing at a high level and still able to do these reductions.
And here's Garden City up in New York.
Yeah, here's Russ McPhail up there has been using the product for quite some time. I think longer than Shannon, right?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's got to be like 5 or 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Again, reduced irrigation, faster turf recovery, the density and depth of the roots are improved, and this is on Long Island. So it's not. It's kind of a unique environment to the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
You have different soil types there than you would have in the rest of New York.
Okay.
You actually have different weather than you have in the rest of New York as well. So again, just another example of someone that was able to with different soil types, and he is actually treating greens, tees, and fairways.
Okay.
So all these, the reduced irrigation is more impactful when you're looking at it over a larger scale, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So this is just a synopsis. The core benefits of the product. We talked about this throughout the case studies and what have you, but nutrient utilization, recovery and playability, root depth and density, tolerance to stress from weather, traffic, and disease, and improved soil health.
Yeah, and the reason why some of these terms are broad is because it actually has a broad application to it. When you think about nutrient utilization, it's not just nitrogen-fixing bacteria going in there.
Sure.
And so that you have more efficient nitrogen use.
Mm-hmm.
It is a full-scale soil ecosystem that is going in there to not just focus on one aspect, but on your main nutrients, your micronutrients, and even affecting nematodes and things like that will play a factor in the overall soil health and turf health.
So I have a question for you guys. Let me launch this poll.
Is that cut off?
Yes, it got extremely cut off. All right. Launch. All right. So which of these benefits are your favorite now that you've heard about them? You have nutrient utilization, recovery and playability, root depth and density, tolerance to stress, and soil health. You only get to pick one.
Choose wisely.
Exactly. It's going to be a pop quiz.
We're going to send this to everybody that you know so they know what you're thinking.
Yes, blast it all over social media. You're trapped. Let's see. We got 56% of the vote. 66. 69. Can we get to 80%? All right. Let's see. Let's see if I can launch it this time.
It's probably going to pull up that other screen.
Probably. But wait. I think I just launched it. So, yep, there we go. So these are our results. Can you read that?
I can. I think
Here we go. 14% on nutrient utilization.
You know, the what I actually like about this, and everybody can see this, right?
Yes.
The 43% on soil health. Soil health encompasses so many of these other aspects that I think it means that people have a better understanding. With soil health, you're going to get better nutrient utilization, recovery, playability, root depth and density, and tolerance from stress, water trapping disease. So it is kind of a way of saying, like, hey, if I actually focus on the soil health, I'm going to have better plant health, and it's going to get me all the other results that I'm looking for.
Yep.
You know, and that's been a message that has become more popular in recent years.
In all industries, not just golf.
And it's you know, we deal a lot with agriculture now, and
soil health is huge.
It's like the hottest topic there is, because they have such a black and white way of measuring. Either you're going to get a better yield and return on investment, or you're not.
Yeah.
They don't care what the plant looks like or anything like that. It either you get the result or you don't. And they're investing similar to golf. They're investing in their land because they can't trade it in. They can't switch to a different site or anything like that. They have to really focus on what they have and make that work.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know this time of year can be busy, and it's tough to make time for education, so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Appreciate having me.